藍染めの作り方をします。まず最初に紙ですけれど、紙は
So the indigo dyeing in Japan does have a long history, but it is not a dye that was normally used for aristocracy, but was used by the farmers and the common people. And indigo is unique in the sense that it starts off in one color, which is a yellowish green, and then when it's exposed to the oxygen, becomes the blue that everybody associates with indigo. With paper, because of the nature of how paper is made, which is a bonding of fibers, that bonding breaks down when it is in a very strong alkaline solution. And so to prevent that from happening, it must be coated with some sort of sizing to give it a wet strength. And in Japan, they use the konnyaku, which is a starch. And to make the size, you'd start off with maybe about 5 to 10 grams of the powder to 1 to 2 liters of water. So it's about a 0.5% solution. And then the powder is very gradually added to the water. And during this process, it's better to have the water moving so you keep stirring it. Then it is heated, brought to a boil, and then allowed to simmer for about 5 to 10 minutes. Constantly stirring so that the konnyaku starch doesn't settle to the bottom and form lumps. You want it as smooth as possible. The paper has a grain to it, and the particular type of paper that's normally used, some of the fibers, loose fibers, will start to form little loose pieces that collect on the surface, so that all must be removed. If it's not removed and the konnyaku sizing is applied, the paper is dyed. During the washing process after the dyeing, all those little pieces will come off and it'll act as a resist and form white areas in your pattern. So when you brush it on, you want to apply it as evenly as possible with the grain of the paper, which is very important. The paper is then dried, and then when it is dried, then the reverse side is again sized with the konnyaku. And an interesting thing about konnyaku is that once the paper has been treated with it, it cannot be recycled. That's how strong the bond is. Unlike other papers where we can sometimes re-soak it and the fibers we can loosen up again and form a new sheet, we cannot do it with konnyaku treated paper. Once the paper is dried, it can be then dyed in a number of ways. One is shiborizome, which is tie dyeing, katazome, which is a stencil dyeing technique, or any of the other techniques that would be used, especially in indigo dyeing. Okay, for shiborizome, the konnyaku treated paper is then dampened, and then wherever you want to have the pattern appearing, you would gather it up in a very even manner, so none of the gathers overlap each other. Then the thread is laid along the direction that you're tying from the base to the point. To begin the tying, you would wrap it maybe once or twice around, pull tightly, and it'll lock that end in. And then you would wrap it in whatever desired fashion you want all the way to the point. When you get to the point, you would do one loop in the reverse direction, slip it over the top, pull it tight, it'll lock the thread in place. You don't want to tie a knot because when you dye it, it is very difficult to remove it, the thread, once it's dyed. So in this fashion, it's possible to just remove the thread once it's dyed. It's very easy to remove. After your desired pattern is tied, everything is tied that you want, then the paper is soaked for at least 10 minutes in water. It is very important that the paper is wet, completely wet, before it's put into the dye so that you have a very even dye occurring. If you have dry areas, those areas will absorb the dye in a different fashion, which gives you an uneven coloration. To prepare the actual indigo dye, generally the basic formula would be 1 kilogram of the skumo, which is the composted indigo. And we start off with about 5 liters of water. And then to that we add about 200 grams of caustic soda, which is a strong alkali. And then we don't really break down, but we mix the solution so that's a very even mixture of the skumo and the water and the alkali. We heat the solution to about 30 degrees centigrade. And then we add more water to bring it up to about 20 liters of liquid. And then we add 200 grams of hydrosulfite, which is the reduction agent, which removes the oxygen from the alkaline liquid and allows the indigo to go into solution so that it can be absorbed into the paper or the fabric as a dye material. Generally, we stir and heat it until 2 things occur. One, that it's a very even mixture of the skumo and there's no hard lumps or big lumps of that remaining, and that we've brought the temperature of the solution to at least 30 degrees centigrade. The ideal conditions for the indigo vat is a pH between 10 and 12 and the temperature of 30 degrees centigrade. If we can maintain that, then we can maintain the vat, and it's very easy to dye. During the dyeing process, it's very important to wear gloves because of the high the pH on it. Those who don't wear gloves could suffer very mild to severe alkaline burns to their skin. Another reason you wear gloves is, unlike other dyes which dye your skin, indigo dyes your fingernails. So while you can remove it from your skin, you cannot remove it from your fingernails. The paper that's prepared for dyeing is removed from the water, and then the excess water is squeezed out. And then you can immerse it into the dye vat. It's very important that when it's in the dye vat that you constantly manipulate the paper so that all the untied areas are exposed to the dye. Any areas that are folded against each other will again act as a resist or hinder the intake of the dye, so it'll be a lighter color or an uneven dyeing that will occur. The dyeing would be 3 to 5 minutes in the dye, and then removed and then exposed to the air for 3 to 5 minutes. And it is this sequence that produces a richer, deeper color. So as opposed to immersing it for 10 minutes and removing it, you'd get a better color by immersing 5 minutes, exposing to the air for 5 minutes, and then re-immersing for another 5 minutes. You can repeat this process with paper up to 10 times. At that point, the paper has to be washed, all the tying undone, and then recoated with the konnyaku sizing. You repeat the process as many times until you get the desired color you want. Indigo dyeing is a basic, very simple process. The only formula to remember is 3 to 5 minutes in the dye, 3 to 5 minutes exposed to the air. Variations come with how many times you repeat this process for your color and how you tie it. While you can go back to see what they did traditionally, it doesn't mean that you cannot try different things and find new ways. Maybe start your own tradition in indigo dyeing.